Hi, in this video I'll be providing an update on the performance of Tic Tac Tips horse racing tipping service, another of the tipster services I've been monitoring since the start of the year. Selections are usually sent out between 10:30 and 11 AM each morning. I went into details about the service in a previous video, which I'll leave a link to in the description below this video. Okay, let's fire up the computer and see how Tic Tac Tips have been getting on. Hopefully you've watched one or more of my other tipster updates and are familiar with the layout of the spreadsheet by now. As I mentioned, tips are sent out mid-morning, so there's no evening prices recorded for the selections. The AP column are the prices advised in the emails that get sent out, and the BAG column are those available when I check the odds after receiving the selections. The betting markets are fairly well established by the time the email goes out, so it's very rare that prices have dropped, which is why the figures in the two columns are pretty much identical. My previous update was in early February, where selections had made a decent start to the year and they were showing a profit of 3.35 points, based upon their advised stakes of 0.25 points each way. By and large since then, there's not been a great deal to shout about. There was a nice 5-to-1 winner in the shape of Bel de Rio, which had been available at 9-to-1 in the morning. That took profits to a high of 4.85 points. Then throughout the remainder of February and all of March, winners became few and far between, with just Lost Eden and the Edgar Wallace finding the winner's enclosure. That's not to say all other bets were losers, as their each-way betting strategy ensures returns on placed selections. At the typical odds they bet at, they're sometimes enough to cover stakes, while others incur a small loss. The average odds for selections since I began monitoring them at the beginning of January has been 3.42. That's 3.42 to 1, not decimal odds of 3.42. April saw a better win strike rate, with 4 winners from their 16 bets, and that provided a modest profit for the month. So far in May, there's been 1 winner from 8 tips sent out, although Solent Gateway did place at odds of 25-to-1, justifying their tips at odds far bigger than their usual selections. Interestingly, their most recent tip, Amy Beach, was advised at odds of 100-to-30, but went off at an SP that was higher, despite late withdrawals of the 2 market leaders. There was time for the bookmakers to reform the market, so there was no Rule 4 deduction on the SP. Overall, for the year to date, the service has shown a loss of 3.6 points, based upon their quarter point each way stakes. So that's 7.2 points to 1 point staked per selection. Now let's see how that looks on the chart. My previous update was back here after 18 bets, and they did well immediately after that. That was after Bel de Rio's win. But then since that date, it's been a steady decline, although things have levelled off pretty well in the last 6 weeks or so. In addition to the best odds guarantee and starting prices, I've also recorded the Betfair SPs. They slightly outperform starting price, but the place prices you get on Betfair for the selections aren't that great, so that's why they're nowhere near as good as the best odds guarantee prices. And that's shown commission based on 5%. The majority of people these days would only be paying 2% commission on Betfair, so if I just change that, it has a slight effect on the overall profits. From a total of 80 bets, they've had 12 winners, which is a strike rate of 15%, which given the general odds range of which they're betting is probably quite a lot lower than they'd expect. Each way there's been 22 successful selections, but again given the odds that they back at, a lot of those are only just marginally profitable and some of the each way selections make a small loss. So that percentage figure can be pretty meaningless really. Overall loss so far based on best odds guaranteed prices is 3.6. At Betfair SP it's 6.67 and an SP it's 8.14. Here's the breakdown for the different months. January and the start of February was good, but then February and March was the killer month really. And as I mentioned, in April and May things have stabilised a lot more. If we take into account the subscription costs, they charge £40 monthly or £100 per quarter, £180 per 6 months or £300 per year. Given that we're in month 5 of the year, if you'd been paying monthly you would have been paying £200. If you paid quarterly, you would have paid £200, but you'd still had an extra month to go. And if you paid half yearly, you'd have saved £20, and again still have another month to go. Based on £10 per selection, so that's £5 each way, you'd have been looking at a loss of £72 on the bets. Take away the £200. In fact, if we make that £180, you'd be looking at an outlay of £252. Again, we'll make that one minus £180. So at £20 total per bet, be £144 and £180 on subscriptions would be £324. And I've shown here £50 per bet. The reason I've done that is because that's the size of figures they show on their website. And if you've been betting at £25 each way, you'd be looking at a loss of £360 plus the 180, so 540. But things aren't all doom and gloom, and they can very quickly turn those figures around. If I jump over to their website and show you the figures they made for last year, go to their past results, and their figures for this year tie up pretty much exactly with the figures I've recorded, if you bear in mind that these are shown to £25 each way stakes. I'll select last year. Obviously there was a break between March and June before the COVID lockdown, but once the lockdown ended, when they came back in June, they made some really good profits throughout the rest of the year. So if they can manage results similar to that again this year, they could end up pretty profitable by the end of the year. I'll be continuing to report on the Tic Tac tips selections, along with the other tipping services I've been monitoring, so make sure you hit the subscribe button and click the bell to get notified when I upload future videos.